Deputy Director General, Mr. Paul Abebio, has urged customers of the over 50 collapsed fund management companies to put their documents together and visit the offices of the Consolidated Bank Ghana for validation and collection of their funds. Last Friday, the Securities and Exchange Commissions revoked the licenses of 53 investment firms as part of the ongoing financial sector cleanup exercise to make it more resilient. Speaking on the Super Morning Show, Mr. Abebio assured affected customers a repayment of their investments as long as they get their documents validated with CBG.
Some of the decisions we've taken are also driven by the reports that they submit. And I think from a regulator's perspective, our mandate really is to ensure the development of an efficient and fair and transparent market in which investors are protected. So in taking some of this action, when we look at the reports and we engage them, we determine, do these actions pose a risk to investors? Is it in the interest of investors for a fund manager to behave in a certain way? And then we take these actions in the interest of protecting investors and also in accordance with the law, because the law has certain specific requirements where SEC has to take enforcement actions if we find certain things to be amiss. Fund managers, what they actually do really is to manage funds on behalf of investors. Investors have a say, actually, in how their funds can be allocated. So I would say that you might have 3 categories, typically. We have the retail segment. And for retail clients, as it is now, we don't have a definition on the limitations. But in a lot of markets, if your net worth is less than a certain figure, for instance, you're only allowed to do mutual funds. What we've developed recently is to place, I would say, umbrella restrictions. So in a sense, until now, we didn't have limitations on related party transactions. But we did have restrictions on what they can do in what we call commercial paper. And commercial paper is supposed to be a high quality fixed income instrument issued by sound corporate bodies. So there you have a business, I would say, issuing or borrowing in essence. And ideally, you should have an arranger structuring the instrument and distributing it to fund managers. Because under those guidelines, fund managers are not supposed to have more than 20% of their AUM in commercial paper. Because commercial paper may not be listed. Oftentimes, as we have it in Ghana now, the commercial paper programs are actually not listed. So even though they are issued by corporates and they are structured notes, you can't trade it easily. Right? That's one dimension. And then they're not supposed to invest more than 10% in a single issuer. Right? So if one firm is issuing and the size makes up more than 10% of a portfolio, you can't buy that at 10%. So those are some of the restrictions that we have in terms of what they can do. But fund managers have a pretty broad range, because what they do is they can manage even high net worth individuals want to do real estate, right? But to the extent where they disclose to you that you have a real estate portfolio and it is an unlisted instrument, that's YMB, their role is to invest in those securities, right? And the question becomes, how tradable are certain securities?
JoyNews' MFR Tradosi visited some offices of the affected firms and reports that most of their gates are under lock and key. According to her, the gate of Gold Coast Securities was locked with notices from SEC posted on the walls.
Securities and Exchange Commission on Friday announced that some 53 financial services and fund management licenses have been revoked. Today, I am currently standing at the Gold Coast Fund Management, and virtually the place is empty. When we came, the only person we spotted in the premises is a security officer who told me that on Friday, officials from SEC had arrived here and locked up the place with their own padlocks and keys, and also asked that he manages the place and takes care of the place as they return today to take stock of what is happening. But when I got here, I realized that the flags of the company, which has to do with the fund management and also the advisory, is instead of flying around, it's actually flying at half-mast, which sort of is supposed to indicate that they are actually not in operation. But one thing I also noticed when I got here was the fact that The SEC statement, which came out on Friday, has been posted on the wall of this particular company, which is now defunct. And so if you get close, you'd see that all the 5 pages of this particular statement by the Securities and Exchange Commission have been posted. So here you see notice of revocation of license of fund management companies and notification of the registrar of companies notice. All these particular 5 notices, which contains the name of Gold Coast Securities, have been posted here just to indicate to customers and also investors that the company is currently defunct. And so basically here at the Gold Coast Securities, nothing is happening. We were expecting earlier that at least we would have customers massing up here to find out what exactly is happening. But we've been here for the past 20 to 30 minutes and absolutely nothing is happening, except that, you know, the security man who is in there is still keeping the place clean and doing his work as instructed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. From here, we'll be moving to First Bank Financial Services. We'll try and go to Tikro Financial Services. So remember that JoyNews brought you a story about how customers had massed up there earlier, some few months ago. They have also been shut down by SEC. And so we'll be touching base with all of these companies to find out what exactly is happening. But from here, at the Gold Coast Securities, I've been reporting.
And I'm joined in the studio by Emefa Jadosi. But there's a list of fund managers who are operating and whose licenses have been revoked, and they include All Time Capital Limited, Apex Capital Partners, Axe Capital Limited, Black Shield Capital Management, Brooks Asset Management Limited, Canal Capital Limited, Corporate Hills Investment Limited, Dow Jays Investment Limited, First Bank Financial Services Limited, Frontline Capital Advisors Limited, Galaxy Capital Limited, Global Investment Bankers Limited, Gold Street Fund Management Limited, Ideal Capital Partners, Intermarket Asset Management Limited, Integrity Fund Management Limited, Crippa Capital Limited, Legacy Fund Management, Liberty Assist Management Limited, Monarch Capital Limited, Mutual Integrity Asset Management Limited, Nest Capital Limited, Nordea Capital, Omega Capital, ProCap Finance Limited, QFS Securities Limited, Sirius Capital Limited, Strategic Hedge Capital Limited, Supreme Trust Capital, Unisecurities, UTrack Capital Management Limited, Wealth Vision Financial Services Limited, and I think another 18 more, because I have given you 32 so far. And so just if you didn't know and you do have some money at any of these places, then there is some protocols to follow to try and get the rest of your money back. But I'm joined by Emefa. Emefa, good morning.
Hi, anymore.
So you've been out there this morning.
Yes.
The most surprising thing from your report, I think, is the fact that there actually nobody showing up at these places. Did you find that a bit strange?
Yeah, because even before going to these various places, that was the main thing, to find customers, because we're expecting that they'll mass up at these, you know, these investment banks. And
as we have seen from the Men's Gold and
other, you know, especially Gold Coast Securities, their customers are quite, you know, angry, and they always go to the place. So we thought that today we'll meet them. So in fact, the Gold Coast Securities was the first place that we went to. But to our surprise, the entire place was very quiet. Nobody at the gates, nobody at the premises, except for the security man who was sweeping the compound. He just told me that government has taken over. Officials of SEC came on Friday. They locked up the place. So indeed, if you stand at the gate, you would see that the place has been locked with new chains. Okay. So nobody has access to the building, and that the way he was instructed, the security man was instructed to ensure that nobody gets access to the premises, and that they were going to return today, this morning. But as at the time we're leaving, they have still not been there.
That's very interesting. Same situation at First Bank?
Same situation at First Bank. In fact, when we go to First Bank was a bit different because people were on the premises. Okay. But these were officials from SEC. Okay. And also some police officers who were standing around, trying to open the door to get access into the particular building. I was speaking to the security men at the gate. I saw a customer who had walked in. you know, in fact, they didn't allow him to enter the building. He was standing outside and he was asking questions about, I want to see your managing director, because he asked me to come on Friday. So apparently the MD for First Bank, according to this man, actually showed me a picture of it, sent him a copy of his check for 10,000 Ghana cedis that he had already signed, and had called him to come pick it up on Friday, because I think they had a hint about the revocation of the license.
Right.
So he asked the man to come for it, because this particular man that we're talking about says his wife is due some operations, and
so he needs to be liquid. He needs his cash.
Exactly. So the MD wanted to help him, but he said he works with a hospital, and he couldn't just leave the office to come immediately to come take the check. So he wanted to see the MD. They would not allow him to enter. So he became very angry.
Yeah.
So I got closer to him and I asked him, how much do you have in there? Then he took out his documents. Anymore, this is 66,900 and something. So yeah, close to 70,000 Ghana cedis that he says that money belongs to him and his wife. They are, they've worked over the years, and those are the monies that they have saved to buy land and build their home and all of that, and also to help his wife recover
from what she's going through.
And the money's locked
up.
up.
And once again, that's the sad thing about all these closures, is that the ordinary Ghanaian suffers because their money is locked up. We hope that the protocol will be followed and we'll get our money back. But meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission say that processes are in motion to have the Registrar General seek a court decision to appoint a receiver to take over the assets of over 50 investment houses whose licenses were revoked last week. Director and head of the Issuers Department of the Commission, Dr. Jacob Adu, told Kojo Yankson on the AM show the 53 firms failed to meet regulatory requirements despite several warnings.
A liquidator will be appointed. Because SEC does not have the power to appoint a liquidator as it was in the case of Bank of Ghana. So we are going to court today to have the Registrar General appointed a liquidator for the 53 companies that are to be liquidated. When that power of the court is obtained by the Registrar General's Department, Registrar General, then an announcement will be made as to the period and where people can submit their receipts, their certificates for validation. The Registrar General also, with the assistance of other professionals that it might engage, will start tracing assets and actually getting some of the investment that these people have made. But some of the investments are in, government bonds, some are in listed companies. In fact, it is not, everything. That is, at least half will be good investments. So at least half is in good investment. But also it depends upon where that company that you invested with, invested the money. If that investor did not put the monies into safe investments such as government bonds, tables, listed companies, and that, then you may be at a greater risk than the investor whose family they put the money in those other. So when the power to liquidate was granted RG, and that's what we made, validation process will start. But as I said before then, it is not that government will, because the commission has been assured that some relief will be given, and that will be sooner than even the Registrar General will do its validation process.